Imagine it's a sweltering Tuesday afternoon. You're sitting in your living room, the sun is beating against the windows, and you finally reach for that remote. You hit the power button. On a standard machine, you hear it. A heavy, mechanical clunk. A brief flicker in your lights. And then, a roar that sounds like a miniature jet engine has just woken up behind your wall. You feel that blast of ice-cold air, and you think, finally, it's working. But what if I told you that every time you hear that clunk, your electricity meter starts spinning like a frantic hamster on a wheel? What if I told you that the very way that machine is designed is actually fighting against your comfort and your wallet? Today, we're going deep. We aren't just looking at stickers and price tags. We're going inside the metal box to understand the battle of the century in home technology. The inverter versus the non-inverter air conditioner. This isn't just about cooling. It's about the science of energy, the physics of motors, and the math of your monthly bill. Let's explain. Before we can understand the inverter part, we have to clear up a massive misconception. Your air conditioner does not create cold. In science, there is no such thing as cold. There is only the absence of heat. Think of your AC as a specialized heat sponge. Inside that unit is a chemical called a refrigerant. This chemical has a very strange property. It can turn from a liquid to a gas at very low temperatures. As it evaporates, it soaks up the heat from your room like a sponge soaks up water. Then, it travels to the outdoor unit, where a machine called the compressor squeezes it. When you squeeze that gas, it gets incredibly hotter than the air outside. That heat is then dumped into the outdoor air, and the chemical, now cooled down and turned back into a liquid, travels back inside to do it all over again. The compressor is the heart of this whole system. It is the pump that keeps the refrigerant moving. It is also the single most power-hungry component in your entire home. In a standard home, the AC compressor can account for 60, 70, or even 80% of your total cooling bill. So, the real question isn't, how does the AC work, but how do we control the compressor? Now, let's look at the old school tech, the non-inverter AC. In the engineering world, we call this a fixed speed system. And the metaphor for this is a world-class sprinter who only knows how to do one thing: run at 100% speed or sit perfectly still. There is no jogging. There is no walking. When you set your non-inverter AC to 24 degrees Celsius, the machine looks at the room. If the room is 30 degrees, the thermostat sends a signal to the compressor, GO. The compressor kicks on at its absolute maximum capacity. It's pushing the refrigerant as hard as it possibly can. It stays at that 100% power level until the room reaches exactly 24 degrees. Once it hits that target, the thermostat says, stop. The compressor shuts down completely. Now, here's where the problem starts. The moment that compressor stops, the room begins to warm up again. The insulation in your walls is imperfect. The window lets in a bit of heat. Within 10 or 15 minutes, the room is at 25 or 26 degrees. The thermostat clicks. Clunk. The compressor screams back to life at 100% power again. This start-stop cycle is the fundamental flaw of the non-inverter. Because it's so simple, these units are much cheaper to manufacture. You'll see them in showrooms with the lowest price tags, and for many, that's a huge advantage. If you're a landlord or you're buying for a guest room that only gets used twice a year, the lower upfront cost is hard to beat. They are also rugged. Because the electronics are basic, almost any technician can fix them with off-the-shelf parts. But you pay for that simplicity every single night. Because it only runs at full blast, you get what we call the temperature swing. You'll feel shivering cold when the unit is on, and then slightly sweaty 5 minutes after it turns off. Your body never finds that sweet spot of comfort. But more importantly, your electricity bill is suffering. This brings us to the hero of modern energy efficiency, the inverter AC. If the non-inverter is a sprinter, the inverter AC is a marathon runner with a high-tech smartwatch. It doesn't believe in all or nothing. It believes in just enough. The inverter isn't a different kind of cooling technology. It's a different kind of brain for the motor. Inside an inverter AC is a piece of hardware called a variable frequency drive. In simple terms, it can change the speed of the compressor motor. When you turn on an inverter AC and set it to 24 degrees, it starts just like the other one, at high speed to cool the room down quickly. But as the room gets closer to that 24-degree mark, something amazing happens. Instead of shutting off, the brain of the AC tells the compressor to slow down. Instead of 100% power, it drops to 60%, then 40%. Eventually, it might just cruise at 10 or 15% power. It stays running constantly, but it's just gently sipping electricity to keep the temperature perfectly stable. The benefit here is a level of comfort that feels almost natural. There are no loud clunks, no flickering lights, and the temperature in the room stays within a fraction of a degree of your setting. It's silent, it's smooth, and it's smart. The drawback, of course, is the complexity. These units are packed with sensitive circuit boards and power modules. This makes them more expensive to buy up front. You're essentially paying for the brain of the machine. And if that brain fails outside of a warranty, the repair cost can be significantly higher than the old-school models. Now, we've talked about the heart of the AC, but what about the blood that flows through it? That's the refrigerant gas. In the old days, almost every AC used a gas called R22, often known as Freon. It worked well, but it was a disaster for the ozone layer. In 2026, you'll rarely see it in a new machine. Instead, we've moved to modern heroes like R410A and the current favorite, R32. This is where the inverter AC shows its true colors. Because an inverter compressor is constantly changing its speed, the pressure inside the pipes is constantly shifting. Modern gases like R32 are designed specifically to handle these pressure changes with incredible efficiency. R32, in particular, is a single-component gas. This means it's easier to recycle and has a much lower impact on global warming. But more importantly for your wallet, it can carry more heat than older gases. When you pair an inverter's smart cruise control with a high-performance gas like R32, you get a machine that is squeezed for every possible drop of cooling power. It's like putting high-octane fuel into a turbocharged engine. Everything just runs better. While the gas is the blood, the coils are the arteries of your air conditioner. This is where the actual heat exchange happens, and here, the material matters more than you might think. You'll usually see two choices, copper or aluminum. In most high-end inverter models, you will find 100% copper coils. There's a scientific reason for this. Copper is a superior thermal conductor. It moves heat much faster than aluminum can. Since the goal of an inverter AC is to be as efficient as possible, using copper is a no-brainer. It allows the machine to dump heat outside more effectively, which means the compressor doesn't have to work as hard. But there's a practical side to this too: durability. Copper is significantly more resistant to corrosion, especially if you live in a humid or coastal area. And if a copper coil ever gets a tiny pinhole leak, a technician can usually weld it and have you back up and running in an hour. Aluminum coils, on the other hand, are often found in budget-friendly non-inverter units to keep the price down. While they do work, they are much harder to repair. If an aluminum coil leaks, you often have to replace the entire outdoor unit because welding aluminum is incredibly difficult. So, while the inverter brain saves you electricity, the copper coils protect your investment for the long term. If the inverter is the brain, think of the copper as the armor. Now, let's talk about the part everyone cares about: the money. Why does a machine that runs all the time save more money than a machine that shuts off? It seems counterintuitive, right? If your car engine is running, you're using gas. If it's off, you're not. But that logic doesn't work for electric motors, and here is why. The secret of startup surge. The biggest energy thief in your home is something called inrush current. Think about pushing a heavy car. The hardest part isn't keeping the car moving. It's getting it to start rolling from a dead stop. You have to put your entire weight into it. Once it's moving, you can keep it going with just one hand. Electric motors are exactly the same. When a non-inverter compressor starts from a dead stop, it requires a massive surge of electricity, often 3 to 5 times more current than it needs when it's actually running. Because a non-inverter AC might start and stop 20 or 30 times a day, those surges add up. You are paying for the effort of starting the motor over and over again. An inverter AC avoids this entirely. It starts up slowly and softly, and because it rarely shuts off, it never has to deal with those expensive startup surges. The second reason involves a bit of thermodynamics. Air conditioners are actually more efficient when they are running at half speed. When a compressor runs at 100%, the heat exchanger, those coils of copper inside your unit, gets very crowded with heat. It's like a crowded hallway where everyone is trying to get out at once. But when the compressor slows down to 30%, that hallway is empty. The heat moves through the copper much more easily. This is called partial load efficiency. By running slower for longer periods, the inverter AC moves more heat per watt of electricity than the non-inverter ever could. This is how you get those massive savings of 30, 40, or even 50% on your cooling bill. There is a common myth that because inverter ACs never stop, they will wear out faster. Actually, the opposite is true. Think about your car. What causes more wear and tear? Driving at a steady 60 miles per hour on a highway, or constantly slamming on the brakes and then flopping the gas in stop-and-go city traffic. The start-stop cycle of a non-inverter is incredibly stressful for the mechanical parts. Every time it starts, the motor jerks, the pistons slam, and the pipes vibrate. An inverter AC, by staying in cruise control, experiences much less mechanical stress. As long as you keep the filters clean and protect the electronics from power surges, an inverter compressor can actually outlast a non-inverter because it lives a much calmer life. Most people look at the price tag and see the inverter AC as more expensive. I want you to look at it as a prepaid electricity bill. If you use your AC for 8 hours a night during the summer, an inverter unit can easily save you a significant amount every month. In most regions, the difference in the purchase price is paid back in electricity savings within 18 to 24 months. After those 2 years, every rupee you save is pure profit in your pocket. However, and this is a big however, this only works if you use it correctly. If you're the type of person who turns the AC on for 20 minutes just to take the edge off and then shuts it down, you are wasting your money on an inverter. The inverter needs time to reach its cruising speed to save you money. It is built for the long haul. In the end, the choice between inverter and non-inverter isn't about which technology is better. Both have a purpose. Buy the non-inverter if you are on a very strict budget. You are installing it in a room that is rarely used, like a guest room or a storage area. You live in an area where the power grid is extremely unstable and repair technicians are hard to find. Buy the inverter if this is for your main bedroom or your home office. You plan to run the unit for more than 4 hours at a time. You value silence and a steady, unchanging temperature. You want to lower your monthly overhead and future-proof yourself against rising electricity rates. Choosing an AC is about understanding your own lifestyle. Don't let a salesperson talk you into a fancy feature you don't need. But don't be penny-wise and pound-foolish by saving money today only to hand it over to the power company for the next 10 years. Now that you know how the compressor thinks, you can make a choice that keeps your room cool and your bank account even cooler. I'm Sal, and that was the Inverter Mystery Explained.